All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today's deep dive is all about Les Brown's The Courage to Live Your Dreams. We're going to squeeze every drop of wisdom from this book, especially focusing on practical tips we can all use.
Absolutely. Kind of like creating a super concentrated motivational boost.
Right. No sugar added. Okay, so Brown starts off with this idea that lots of people, maybe even most, were just drifting through life. He talks about this like driving 12 miles to work and not even remembering the trip.
He's really onto something there. It's like, imagine walking through a breathtaking forest, but you're staring at your phone the whole time. You're there, but are you really experiencing it?
Oh, totally. Like when I catch myself driving and I have no clue how I got there. So is he saying we need to be like super mindful of every little thing we do?
Not exactly, no. It's more about realizing we have the power to actually choose. We're not just programmed robots. We can break bad habits, we can build good ones. We're in control.
So it's more about like actively steering your life instead of just letting it happen to you.
Exactly. And that takes us to another big idea, mastering our mindset. Brown gets super personal here, sharing his own battles with, a hot temper.
And this is where things get really interesting. He didn't just try to, bury his anger. He learned to spot the signs, like his heart racing. Then he'd actually interrupt the reaction, like hitting a pause button.
It's amazing how he uses this fencing analogy, right? His coach taught him to physically step back if he felt that anger rising.
So using physical distance to, like, create mental space.
Yeah.
Cool. But how does someone, say, dealing with negative self-talk, how do they use this?
Brown's saying self-awareness is the key. You got to recognize those thoughts, see what triggers them, and then you can consciously choose to react differently.
So instead of being swept away by the negativity, you ride the wave, so to speak.
Exactly. And when it comes to attitude, Brown says we can't control every single thought that pops up, but we can choose which ones we focus on.
So it's not about forcing happiness, it's about directing your attention.
Precisely. Choosing to focus on the good, even when it's tough. And that leads us to another theme, living your dream, actually going for it.
And here's where Brown tackles the fear that stops so many people. He has this story about a friend who always wanted to be an actor, but fear just took over. Let it win.
And then he contrasts that with another friend who actually did go for her acting dream, later in life even, and she's killing it. It's all about commitment, pushing past that fear.
Okay, easier said than done, right? How do you tell someone scared of failing to just go for it?
Brown uses this powerful anecdote. It's a bit of a tragic one, but it gets the point across. A man who lost his daughters in a fire, totally devastated by grief.
This story was
Yeah.
just, wow. His brother-in-law actually called him a coward because he couldn't save his daughters. And the man, in all his grief, he took that on, started acting like a chicken out of fear and guilt.
Shows how crippling fear can be. Holds you back from living fully, even years later.
So Brown's not saying to ignore fear, but acknowledge it and then move forward anyway.
Exactly. And that takes us to an interesting concept. You Incorporated. He wants us to view ourselves as companies.
So instead of I'm stuck at this job, it becomes I'm a company with skills. What other clients or opportunities are out there? That's a cool shift.
He uses this example of his friend, super organized guy, helps everyone else get their life together, but doesn't apply it to himself.
Like we're all building empires for others and neglecting our own.
Right. And Brown uses the story of Nat King Cole to show that sometimes we don't even know our talents until we're pushed.
Nat King Cole, amazing pianist, but didn't even know he could sing until a customer practically made him try it.
Makes you wonder, what talents are W sitting on? What haven't we discovered yet?
Like we're all undiscovered gold mines waiting for the right tools.
I love that. But here's the thing. As soon as you start digging for that gold, that inner critic pops up.
You mean the voice that says we're not good enough, talented enough, worthy enough?
Exactly. And Brown doesn't sugarcoat it. Going for your dream triggers this. He even mentions a study with the UCLA swim team.
So without getting into the whole study, what's the takeaway?
The swimmers who improved, they tended to have a positive mindset. Setbacks were flukes, chances to learn. But the ones stuck in negativity, their performance tanked.
So our thoughts actually affect our results. Empowering and scary at the same time.
That's why Brown says we got to counter those negative thoughts head on. Write down your goals, read them 3 times a day, keep them front and center.
Flooding your mind with positivity, like a mental detox.
Exactly. He quotes Dennis Waitley here. What we have in our lives is a result of our current dominant thinking.
So if it's all negative thoughts, no wonder life feels like one big disappointment.
Right. So Brown's all about affirmations, finding motivational stuff, even just talking to yourself positively, drowning out the bad stuff.
Like rewiring your brain for success.
You got it. But there's one more ingredient: enthusiasm.
Oh, this is my favorite part. He says enthusiasm is contagious, especially in sales. People buy on feeling, not logic.
He tells this story about his friend Bob Boyd, so fired up about a business idea that Brown jumped in even before knowing all the details.
It's like people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Passion is what hooks them.
Exactly. So how passionate are we about our own dreams? Can we get others excited too?
Good question. It's not enough to just have the dream. You got to feel it burning inside.
Right. And speaking of challenges, Brown says they're part of the package deal of life. He compares it to turbulence on a plane.
Fasten your seatbelts, everyone. It's going to get bumpy.
He even quotes Marlon Brando. "The messenger of misery visited my house today." Pretty intense.
Sobering. But his point is everyone faces challenges. It's how you deal with them that matters.
To illustrate this, he shares a personal story: buying his mom a house, but then losing it due to a legal mess-up.
This one really hit home for me. It's like even when you do everything right, life can throw a curveball. But what was inspiring was his mom's reaction.
When she heard about losing the house, she just said, "I didn't like that house anyway." No dwelling on the loss, just focusing on the positive.
So powerful, right? Our perspective really shapes our reality. And of course, Brown ended up buying his mom an even better house, turning that setback into fuel.
Key takeaway is challenges are chances to grow. Your attitude determines if you break or become stronger.
I love that. It's not about avoiding challenges. It's about learning to dance with them.
Speaking of dancing, remember Audrey Pillmore?
Is that the woman with MS who just radiated joy despite everything?
The one and only. She shows happiness, even facing incredible adversity.
Brown even mentioned she inspired someone who was thinking about suicide. That's impactful.
It shows happiness comes from within, not from external things.
It's about finding the good, even when things are rough.
And that brings us to other people, the roles they play in our lives. Brown uses this sports analogy. You need a home court advantage, a team to cheer you on and help you through the tough times.
He calls them only quality people, OQP, right? And he says we need both inspirers.
The people who lift you up, see your potential even when you don't.
And trusted critics, those who give honest feedback, even the tough kind.
So you're building a team that pushes you to grow, to be your best.
So who's on your team? Are they helping or hindering your growth? Think about it. Let's pause here and continue exploring those relationships in part 2 of our deep dive.
Back again for more of Les Brown's wisdom, continuing our deep dive into the courage to live your dreams.
And we're getting into the nitty-gritty this time, right? Techniques, strategies, how to actually go from dreaming to doing. Brown talks a lot about having high standards.
Oh yeah, he's all about mastering your craft, the details, going above and beyond. He even uses this simple example, like a gas station attendant who doesn't even acknowledge the customer's waiting.
Makes you wonder how many chances we miss just by not being, well, decent and attentive.
Exactly. And then Brown talks about a hotel where the staff was amazing, made everyone feel so welcome.
These days, with all the online reviews and stuff, that kind of positive experience is gold.
Brown's point is, it doesn't matter what you do, cashier or CEO, high standards matter.
But it's not just T-high standards, right?
Yeah.
He also says we got to go at it massively.
Promote yourself, let the world know what you're about. He has this analogy about throwing rice at a wall.
Okay, I'm picturing it, but what's the lesson here?
It's a numbers game. More seeds you plant, more chances they'll sprout. He even tells a story about someone contacting him 3 years after getting his business card.
So even if it doesn't happen right away, keep at it.
Persistence, that's the key. You never know when a past connection might turn into something big.
It's like, best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Second best time is today.
And Brown reminds us, there's never a perfect time to start chasing your dream. It's so easy to wait for all the stars to align.
Oh, I'm so guilty of that. Waiting for the perfect moment, and then life just passes me by.
There'll always be something holding us back if we let it.
So how do you break out of that cycle? Procrastination and self-doubt, it's tough.
Brown says act en nabiu. Take that first step, even if it's scary, even if you don't know everything. Action beats fear.
But what if the fear is just, like, paralyzing? Some people are genuinely terrified of failing.
That's where Brown suggests visualization. Really picture yourself succeeding over and over.
Like reprogramming your mind for success.
He even used it himself. To get over his fear of public speaking, he had to repeatedly imagine himself speaking confidently to crowds to get past the anxiety.
You know, I used to think visualization was kind of a woo-woo thing, but there's actually science behind it. Athletes use it all the time.
Brown says create a vivid picture, feel the emotions, embody the qualities you need.
So it's not just seeing the end goal, it's feeling it, making it real in your head.
Exactly. And then take action, do the work, even when it's hard, when you're scared.
He also mentions affirmations to combat that negative self-talk that creeps in.
Oh, totally. Replacing those doubts with positive statements, reminding yourself what you're capable of.
Like giving your brain a positivity makeover?
And it's not a one-time thing. Write them down, repeat them, even record yourself saying them.
I tried that once, recording affirmations. Felt weird at first, but I gotta say, it did help.
Brown says our thoughts create our reality, you know. Words have power.
So we gotta be mindful of what we're feeding our minds.
Right.
And that includes who we surround ourselves with. He talks a lot about our environment.
He's got that famous line, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
So if you're hanging out with negative, unmotivated people, good luck staying focused on your own goals.
Brown says, choose your inner circle wisely.
Only quality people, OQP, right?
Yep. And OQP isn't just who you hang out with, it's who you learn from. Mentorship is huge for Brown.
It's like, don't try to reinvent the wheel. Find someone who's already done what you want to do and learn from them.
He compares it to sailing. Would you just hop on a boat with no clue? No, you'd get an instructor, someone to show you the ropes.
Makes sense. But what about people who don't have access to mentors or are too intimidated to reach out?
Brown has another technique to boost self-belief. Find a time in your pastee where you faced a fear and won.
Digging into your personal archive of courage, basically.
He uses the example of a Vietnam vet who draws strength from remembering his time in combat. We've all overcome stuff, we just got to remember it.
Like finding buried treasure. Those moments of strength we sometimes forget about.
And once you find them, use them to fuel yourself forward.
Okay, so we've got visualization, affirmations, surrounding yourself with the right people, drawing strength from the past. What other practical advice does he give for actually setting goals and taking action?
Well, he's all about writing your goals down, breaking them into smaller steps, making a plan, even setting deadlines.
So you're not just dreaming, you're making it concrete.
And then, of course, take action. Even small steps count.
But what about messing up? We take action, things don't go as planned, what then?
Brown's very clear. Mistakes are inevitable. They're part of the process, not the opposite of success.
So it's about learning, adjusting, and getting back in the game.
And staying positive throughout. Gratitude, celebrating small wins, all that helps.
It's easy to get discouraged when you hit a wall, but focusing on the positive can change the whole game.
See the opportunity in the obstacle, right?
Okay, so goals are written, we have a plan, good people around us, we're visualizing, affirming our strengths. What's the missing piece?
A self-belief, no doubt. Brown's adamant you gotta believe in yourself to achieve your dreams.
But what if you're struggling with self-doubt? Like you genuinely don't think you can do it?
Brown says focus on your strengths, acknowledge your accomplishments, even the small ones. Remember past successes.
Create a highlight reel of awesomeness, not a blooper reel of failures.
Exactly. And self-belief, it's not something you're born with, it's something you build. Choose to believe in yourself, even when it's hard.
And that ties into another big thing he talks about, finding your purpose.
He believes we all have something unique to contribute. It's about exploring your passions, your talents, and using them to make a difference.
But what if you just don't know what your purpose is? You're lost, no direction.
Brown says, it might not be crystal clear right away. It can unfold over time as you learn and grow.
So it's not about having all the answers, it's about being brave enough to keep asking questions.
Be open to possibilities, trust the journey.
That's reassuring. You don't have to have everything figured out right now.
He also talks about living a life of service, giving back, being part of something bigger.
Shifting from what can I get to what can I give?
And he says giving back isn't just the right thing to do, it's deeply fulfilling, gives your life meaning.
Okay, we've covered a lot here. What stands out most to you?
For me, it's how much Brown believes in the power of our thoughts. We literally create our reality, you know? Focus on the positive, challenge your doubts, surround yourself with good people.
I agree. And that emphasis on action, that's key. Dreaming is great, but you got to take steps to make it happen.
And never give up. You'll hit bumps in the road, but keep going, keep learning.
Like he says, failure isn't an option, it's just a detour.
perfect way to put it. And I think his message is really about empowerment. We all have the potential to be amazing. By facing our challenges, living intentionally, we can create incredible lives.
That's a great segue into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore Brown's thoughts on relationships and building a support system that helps us shine. Join us for part 3. Welcome back, everyone. It's time to wrap up our deep dive into Les Brown and the courage to live your dreams.
And we've saved, you could say, the best for last. Human connection, how powerful it is.
Brown keeps coming back to that idea, right? We need a team, a support system to truly thrive.
He calls them only quality people, OQP. But it's not just about having people cheer you on. Remember, he breaks it down further, those inspirers and trusted critics.
And we need a mix, right? Encouragement and honest feedback, both are essential.
Exactly. You got to have people who see your potential even when you don't, but also people who call you out, those who can spot your blind spots.
Because sometimes tough love is exactly what gets you moving. Brown even says, surrounding yourself with yes men, that's a recipe for staying stuck.
Oh, absolutely. He talks about having this guy in his life, Mike, who tells him the hard stuff, the things he doesn't want to hear. And as much as it might sting, Brown knows how valuable that is.
Makes me think of those singing shows, where the judges are sometimes brutal.
Yeah, some people say they're too harsh.
But honestly, sometimes that brutal honesty is what wakes someone up. They realize, okay, got to work harder, try a different approach. Maybe this isn't for me after all.
It's about having people who care enough to be real with you, even when it's uncomfortable.
And it takes two to tango, right? It's not enough to just get that feedback. You got to be open to it, willing to learn and change.
Now, on the flip side, Brown's also big on warning us about toxic people, real energy vampires.
The ones who bring out the worst in you, make you feel small, discouraged. I've definitely had those relationships. They're exhausting.
He tells this story about his friend, who basically transforms around a certain group, starts cursing, drinking too much, even messing with drugs. Stuff he'd never do otherwise.
It's easy to say, well, he's making his own choices. But Brown's saying our environment, it really affects us.
Like, we become chameleons, trying to blend in, even if it means sacrificing our own values.
So how do you protect yourself from that?
Brown keeps it simple. Distance. Don't argue, don't try to change them, just walk away. That negativity, it's contagious.
Like that saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. If you're always around negativity, you'll have nothing left to give.
To really drive this home, he talks about these two high school classmates, Willie Covington and Larry Little, both talented football players.
Covington was supposed to be the natural star, right?
But he hung out with the wrong crowd, got into trouble, ended up in prison. Larry Little, on the other hand, was all about discipline, working hard.
Practiced every day, ignored the distractions, and boom, successful NFL career.
Years later, Brown runs into Covington in prison. One wasted his potential, the other achieved his dreams.
It's sad, but it shows how much our social circle matters. It shapes our choices, our destiny even.
And it's not just the big picture stuff. Brown also says relationships affect our day-to-day well-being, mentally and physically.
He talks about this woman, Pat, living with a friend who is always negative, argumentative.
And Pat starts getting physical symptoms, even a limp. It wasn't until she moved out away from that toxic friend that she got better.
Ever notice how being around certain people just drains you? Like physically and emotionally.
It's like they're sucking the life out of you. Brown says check in with your relationships regularly. Ask yourself, who am I becoming because of this person?
If the answer isn't good, time to reevaluate that connection.
Now, switching gears a bit, Brown's also a big believer in mentorship, finding people to guide you.
He uses that analogy of someone scared of sailing. What they need is coaching, not avoidance.
And he says it applies to everything, right? Are we willing to ask for help when we need it? Admit we don't have all the answers.
Makes me think of that Joe Frazier quote. All of us are like the blind man at some point in our life, standing on the corner, waiting for somebody to lead us across.
We don't have to do it alone. Asking for help, that's strength, not weakness.
And Brown also mentions Sidney Simon's work on toxic versus nourishing people.
Nourishing people, they inspire you, bring out your best, take you feel good. Those are the ones to keep close.
But gardening, right? Be careful what seeds you plant, what relationships you nurture. You want a beautiful, thriving ecosystem.
Speaking of leaving something beautiful behind, Brian also talks about legacy, what we want to be remembered for.
He says, what we do for ourselves, that goes with us when we're gone. But what we do for others, that's what stays behind.
Powerful reminder to focus on making a positive impact.
So, wrapping up our Les Brown deep dive, what's one final thought we can leave our listeners with?
I keep coming back to that you incorporated idea. We're the CEO of our own lives. Take charge of your skills, create opportunities. Don't wait for them.
But it's not just about the big, flashy goals.
Right.
It's the everyday choices, how we treat people, the energy we bring to our interactions.
Are we being the kind of friend, partner, colleague, mentor that we do want to have?
Are we seeking out those OQPs? And just as important, are we being an OQP for someone else?
Because at the end of the day, it's those connections, those relationships that make life truly rich.
So go out there, build those connections, support each other, and live those dreams.
You've got the courage inside you. Like Les Brown says, it works if you work it.
That's all for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time for another exploration of, well, life, the universe, and everything.